Hello and welcome back to another kind of random magic video. This deck video is not really a deck design. Well, I suppose it is. There's a few variants of magic where in casual settings they are essentially unofficial variations of multiplayer. This is a version called Horde. Typically you will see this version, the classic Horde decks are zombie tribal, where the original idea came about of two people going against a Horde, some kind of tribal deck. Recently, in the Theros block, they had 3 game day events per each set. One of them featured a Minotaur Horde, which the Horde itself, it was different from the other two. The Beat of God and the Face of Hydra were unique. The Horde one, the Minotaur one, was actually very similar to the classic Horde variant of zombies. One of my older friends had a zombie Horde deck that we played up until around New Phyrexia. Problem was, of course, he never updated the deck. There's so many different variations of the rules to Horde, especially in multiplayer, going past 2 players, or especially in EDH. It was essentially just discarded, which was a shame because in the Avison block and Innistrad, there's lots of really good zombie cards that I've seen some really fantastic Horde zombie decks. But recently, we have been introduced a token Minotaur, so that means that you can now make a Minotaur token Horde deck. Again, the classic one is zombies, but I've seen some people devise a sliver deck list, which looks devastating and impossible to win against. And then other tribal ones too, a changeling one someone had posted I saw. I love Minotaurs. As a tribal, I've always had fun trying to make the Minotaur tribal work in the classic 60 casual, but seeing now that I can include almost every Minotaur in a Horde deck, I had to go here. So the classic design of a Horde deck is 100 cards. It is 60 tokens. The zombie one, of course, you can see the veritable 20 or 50 of the 2/2 zombies and maybe up to 10 of the 5/5 zombies. There's a few variations of different tokens. For example, there's smaller and bigger beasts. Beast Horde is another common one you'll see. Zombies is definitely the most popular because there's just so many cards that go with it. So right here we have 60 Minotaur tokens. I'll go ahead and while I'm explaining, before I get into the deck, I'll explain how this works. So it is designed initially for the 100 card setup for 2 people to go against the Horde. The classic rules are the 2 opponents. It's similar to Two-Headed Giant, where they have a shared turn order and a shared hit point bar. In casual 60 decks, your hit points is set to 40 because each player contributes 20 hit points. They have 3 turns, and they go first before the Horde deck starts. And how that Horde deck starts, essentially everything's shuffled up and turned upside down. The Horde deck reveals cards and puts them directly into play or casts them for free until they hit a non-token card. So a 100 card deck with 60 tokens means you have a very good chance of hitting 2 Minotaur tokens and then some other spell. That is their turn. The Horde deck has to attack every turn if able, and all their creatures have haste. I'll get into some of the more restricted and banned cards for this format later, but let's go through the deck so you have a better idea of what this works with. So here is 60 tokens. Now there's only 40 other cards in the deck. Classic Horde deck list you'll see run about 30 to 35 creatures that complement, like the tribal creatures, then up to the rest just supporting cards. So the Horde deck actually has infinite mana. And since they have infinite mana, there's a lot of cards that are restricted, so you can't put obvious things like Geth. The creature Geth is banned in the zombie tribal because he goes infinite. There's other things like the dragon or aggravated assault where you can have infinite combat steps. Things like that, or X spells like Exsanguinate are not permitted in the Horde deck because they are just insta-win spells. Also, you have to have at least 40% of your deck cannot be token, otherwise you would just do 99 tokens and a Crumb's Memorial and win. But let's go through these creatures here. So Minotaur Illusionist, don't really care about the mana cost here, but he has 2 abilities. The Horde can pay these infinitely, so he can essentially become himself, he can make himself impossibly targeted. You can sack him to do damage to a creature equal to his power. He's normally a 3/4, but there are things that make him bigger in here. the choice effects the Horde makes are supposed to be the most chaotic. But obviously, you want to give him Shroud or Hexproof whenever someone tries to target him. Or if there's a threat that may kill the Minotaur Horde, obviously he's going to sack himself. You can't make that target irregular or random. The randomness is there mostly for, like, well, it's kind of hard to determine, like block effects, obviously, things like that. But let's go through the rest of these here. Ethereum Horn Sorcerer is... There's a rule stipulation I have to add here, since anything that goes into the Horde's hand, for example, they have infinite mana, so they can cascade infinitely, technically. In this particular design, I do not let the Horde use that ability, unless it's for spot removal, or to bane out a board wipe. The cascade will essentially just get into another Minotaur, though. Then we have a lot of just vanilla guys, a big 4/6 Minotaur and a 2/3 Minotaur. The classic Minotaur range currently with all these new sets is about 2/3 per power and toughness. We have a 3/3 Inspire. When he becomes untapped, something gets Intimidate. I wanted to put a lot of Lords in here, kind of do duplicates of, but some of them, like, they just didn't feel flavorful enough. Giving them all Death Touch isn't quite Minotaurish. But at the same time, he's really powerful. I have a few extra, I may switch this out later. But this is a better Minotaur Lord. Haste doesn't matter, but giving everything essentially a +2/0 boost when they attack is good. So we have 4 of them. There is a Singleton Battle Shaper here, another gigantic Minotaur, that at the beginning of each combat, it's just really nice to have some control of the combat itself. Again, the Minotaurs, the Horde has a chaotic choice effect, so something like this, it's going to be up to both opponents to choose what would technically be the best way for the Horde to win. Sometimes in Horde decks, you might have a third party actually playing the Horde deck out if there's too many choices. We have a Battalion Horde, which is pretty nifty for double. Boris Reckoner is no longer nearly as expensive as he used to be, luckily, so I was able to pick this guy up for dirt cheap. The first strike is nice, and of course the damage, it's a redirect to face. Then we have one, since this one I will let the Horde play with its infinite mana, he is essentially immune to damage. Horde has no land, so this one doesn't matter if it dies. The Piper, again, anything that goes to the Horde's hand, they have infinite mana. They are supposed to drop it as soon as they can legally. So any creature bounced to their hand, they can just drop it right back with this. Oh, I got that backwards. I'm sorry. This is the one where anything has to block it. The flyers have to block it, kind of like the lore effect. Champions, nice little first strike. A smaller Lord, I was tempted to get a playset of him. I may get 3 more just for this. Again, infinite mana means infinite regeneration. He already has to attack every turn, though. This is a pretty nifty one to untap and get an extra token of a Lord, or an extra token of a creature, maybe a Lord for a turn. Get down there. This is one just simply pumps itself, not too interesting. Another vanilla first strike. You see that 2/3 body. This was actually one of the older ones. I just got this one of these foily. This one is a nifty one where, again, the Horde can pay infinite mana, but this is something they don't want to use the mana on. And this is one that is, I used to love this card when it first came out in drafts. This is something, since the Horde has no mana, no lands, it doesn't really matter. It's just a 5/2. Haste, again, doesn't matter, but he gets a small little boost in power. Another vanilla 4/3. I do like Minotaur Aggressor. I have fond memories of when this was in Standard. I had a gimmick-ass deck with this and, what was it called? That enchantment. The, Homicidal Seclusion. I wanted to run Dragons at the time, but I couldn't get enough Thunder Mauls, so I used him as a replacement until then. So we got 3 of him. Then we have the better Lord. This Lord is a 2/3 giving everything trample. So of course we have a playset of him. He's a very big threat when playing against this deck. We have a Singleton Tarngarth. Of course, the Horde has infinite mana, so they can make use of his ability very efficiently, attacking and then destroying appropriate. And the big bomb of the deck is a pair of Lord of Shatterskull passes. This is a problematic card to go up against. As I said, the Horde has infinite mana. He can come out on turn, as soon as technically their turn 1, and swing. And if they have infinite mana, they can level them up immediately. So giving 2 of these guys in here, this became kind of the challenging card of the decks. And the final 4 cards in my setup, there's a Door of Destinies and a Coat of Arms for boosting the clan. A Brass Herald is a generic Lord that essentially puts a few extra into your hand, which then they come into play because they have infinite mana. And then a Patriarch's Bidding is the last bomb card, essentially returning everything previously dead to play. So let's explain that real quick. The way the Horde wins is obviously if it kills the opponents. The way the opponents win is if the Horde has 1, no deck left, and nothing in play. So you can technically, when you attack the Horde, you're attacking their deck, and the damage you do mills them to their graveyard. So in all chance possible, you really want to mill this card, otherwise you may just be popping about 60 hasty Minotaurs right back to play. So this is kind of the situational card that may be removed. But at the same time, the power level of this deck is very erratic. Sometimes, if you've ever played Horde before, you know sometimes you just decimate the Horde. Sometimes you die very, very quickly, especially something like this coming out. The Horde itself, like going up against them when they are like zombies, that's kind of a thematic one. You'll see a lot more enchantment support, like the Endless Ranks of the Dead or Bad Moon, just about anything zombie lords. There's tons of zombie lords. Something like the spells where you can get 13 zombies and play and flash it back, since they have infinite mana, it's going to happen anyways. But the other smaller tribes, like I think I saw one single list for a bird deck, and it didn't work out so well. I don't think I would have bothered playing it. I wanted something more for 2 players, up to 3 players. The problem is, of course, modifying the rules here to make this fit when you have more than 2 players, because that's the initial design. I've seen a lot of people, in the zombie one, what we did is we essentially made it a 200 card deck. Every time a player added themselves, it was 50 cards per player. So obviously 2 players is 100 cards, 350 for 200 cards. And of course, since they're gaining, every person that adds themselves to fight the Horde is adding 20 life points. The rules adjusted themselves, so instead of flipping 1 non-token permanent per turn, you would then flip 2 per turn. Some people also change the rules regarding when the Horde actually gets to start, if it's turn 2 or 3. But there's lots of tweaking you can do depending on the power level of your decks. Also in EDH, because obviously in EDH you have access to a commander. It may be a slower deck you're running instead of a casual 60 card deck. It's all situational. I'm probably going to keep this at 100 and keep it designed for 2 to 3 players. At the same time, I like the idea of having a zombie deck again. It's just, my friend had one, and he definitely doesn't have it. I think he still has the tokens, but it hasn't been updated for so long. And with all the fun cards in Innistrad, it would be really nice to update that deck. Again, there was a game day deck with all sorts of Minotaur-related creatures. Mostly the 2-3 generic bodies, but lots of thematic stuff. I may end up adding those here. I may bump this up to 200. I'm not too sure. I don't know. I'll play. The tricky thing is getting people to play this, because if they had a bad experience, if the Horde just continually destroys them, tweaking the rules sometimes make people feel bad about the power level of their decks compared to a casual gimmick. Yeah, it's all situational. I guess it kind of depends on the maturity level of your friends. But I mean, this is a super cheap deck design, like as a supplemental multiplayer co-op kind of thing. Getting 60 tokens is not hard, especially these guys, because no one cared about them. Zombie tokens have been printed forever. The sliver tokens, if you're going to go with the official ones, good luck with that. The goblins, of course, you can do. There's just so many different variations. Obviously, angels, demons, and dragons you can do, but that's going to be giving you a very, very competitive deck to go against, because they're very high-powered, and you're going to be seeing more than 2 or 3 a turn, possibly. Very rarely do you whiff and get like no offense. Usually it's the Horde tends to put up a very good defensive or offensive attack. But that's it. Any comments or ideas? I am recording this obviously halfway through the Fate Reforged set, so I don't plan on seeing any new Minotaurs for a while. But I love the fact they gave me a token to actually make with there. But obviously any ideas, let me know.